My beloved child, something has shifted behind the version of your soulmate you thought you understood, and the truth is far more unexpected than the image they have allowed the world to see. Stay with me, because this is not about discovering something dark. It is about discovering something deeper. For a long time, your soulmate has mastered the art of appearing ordinary. They smile when others expect them to smile. They remain composed when emotions are moving beneath the surface. They speak as though everything is simple, yet somewhere behind those carefully chosen words lives a side of them almost nobody has truly met. And here is where everything begins to change. That hidden side has been responding to you. Your presence has been awakening thoughts they believed they could keep silent forever. Don't skip this moment, because the person you thought you knew may only be the outer layer of someone whose real intentions are finally beginning to surface. There is a reason they have been difficult to read. Your soulmate is not who they pretend to be because, in reality, they are someone who feels far more deeply than they reveal. Someone who notices tiny details. Someone who remembers words you probably forgot saying. Someone who has imagined conversations with you that never happened aloud. They may present themselves as detached, confident, or completely focused on their own path, but that image has been protecting something surprisingly sincere. What if their silence was never emptiness? What if it was preparation? Stay a little longer, because one detail changes the meaning of everything. Lately, they have started questioning whether hiding their authentic self is costing them the connection they secretly value most. And that connection leads directly back to you. Picture the future for a moment. Not as fantasy, but as possibility. There comes a point when pretending becomes more exhausting than telling the truth, and your soulmate appears to be approaching that emotional crossroads. They have spent so much time being the person everyone expects that showing you who they really are feels enormous. Yet something about you keeps challenging the disguise. Around you, the carefully controlled version begins to crack, not into chaos, but into honesty. Their softer thoughts appear. Their unfinished dreams return. Their desire to be understood becomes harder to ignore. Something huge is waiting for you in this revelation, because their hidden identity is not defined by a mysterious label. It is defined by a truth. Beneath everything they pretend to be, your soulmate may actually be a person searching for the one connection where they no longer have to perform. But there is another layer, and this is the one you might miss if you leave too soon. Your soulmate has not only been hiding themselves from you, in some ways, they have been hiding themselves from themselves. They built an identity around being unaffected, independent, unreadable, always one step ahead. Then you entered their emotional landscape and suddenly that identity stopped fitting as comfortably as before. Why? Because genuine connection acts like a mirror. It reveals the difference between who someone performs as and who they become when nobody is watching. And when your soulmate looks into that invisible mirror now, they are beginning to recognize someone completely different, someone capable of choosing authenticity over appearance, courage over hesitation, and a meaningful future over an easy disguise. Before you go, hear this carefully. The greatest surprise is still ahead, because there is one particular truth your soulmate has been protecting more carefully than everything else. It explains the strange distance. It explains the moments when their energy seemed to change. It explains why they can appear completely certain one moment and unusually thoughtful the next. You might think you already know what that truth is, but the obvious answer is not the real one. Wait till the final moment of this story unfolds, because once that hidden piece becomes clear, you may understand why your soulmate could never remain the person they pretended to be forever. There is one detail your soulmate never expected anyone to notice, and somehow, you came closer to it than anyone else. The confident version they show the world was carefully built over time, but beneath it lives someone completely different. Someone who has been quietly imagining what life could become if they finally stopped hiding what matters to them. And here is the unexpected part: they did not plan for you to become important enough to challenge that disguise. At first, they believed they could keep everything neatly separated, their public personality on one side, their deepest thoughts on the other. Then certain moments with you began staying in their mind longer than expected. A sentence. A look. A small memory. Something seemingly ordinary would return hours later with an entirely different meaning. Stay a little longer, because this is where the title begins revealing its real secret. Your soulmate is not simply pretending to be stronger, colder, or less interested than they truly are. In reality, they may be someone preparing for a completely different chapter of life. And that chapter requires something they have avoided for a long time: honesty. Not dramatic honesty. Not some impossible confession. Something quieter and more powerful: the courage to let another person see beyond the polished version. They have begun realizing that being understood might matter more than being impressive. Think about that. Someone who once believed control was everything is starting to wonder whether authenticity could give them something control never could. What if this is the turning point? What if the reason their behavior sometimes seems contradictory is because two versions of them are competing for the future? One version wants everything predictable. The other wants something real. One says, "Keep your feelings private." The other keeps returning to you. Don't skip what comes next, because the second version is becoming harder for them to silence. Recently, something inside their thinking appears to have changed. Instead of asking themselves, "How do I keep everything exactly as it is?" they are beginning to ask a completely different question: what happens if I finally become who I really am? That question carries your presence inside it. Not because you are responsible for changing them, but because meaningful connections sometimes reveal possibilities people could not see alone. Your soulmate may have presented themselves as someone who needs nobody, expects nothing, and can simply move forward untouched. Yet underneath that performance is someone who wants to build, create, grow, and eventually share a life where they can speak without constantly editing themselves. Something huge is waiting for you here. Their greatest secret may not concern their past at all. It may concern the future they have quietly started imagining. If this unfolding message reminds you of someone whose actions have always seemed deeper than their words, you can share it, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe if you want to continue this journey as the next pieces appear. Because the next piece matters. There is one specific reason your soulmate became so skilled at hiding this authentic side, and understanding it changes the entire picture. Their distance suddenly makes sense. Their hesitation makes sense. Even those moments when they seemed ready to reveal something and then changed direction begin to look different. You might miss the turning point if you leave here, because what they have been protecting is not simply an emotion, it is a decision about the kind of person they want to become. And now the mask is becoming difficult to maintain. The future is calling for a version of them that cannot survive behind appearances forever. They can continue being the person everyone assumes they are, or they can finally step toward the person they privately know themselves to be. Somewhere inside that choice is an unfinished truth connected to you. They have rehearsed it mentally. They have reconsidered it. They may even have convinced themselves more than once that saying nothing would be easier. But easier and meaningful are not always the same path. Wait till the next revelation, because the real question is no longer whether your soulmate has another side. The real question is why they have finally decided that you may be the person worthy of seeing it. Now the pattern changes completely, because the secret is no longer about what your soulmate has been hiding. It is about what they are quietly becoming. Somewhere between the person everyone recognizes and the person they are when the noise disappears, a new version of them has started emerging. They are noticing their own contradictions. They can no longer say they want a meaningful connection while constantly protecting themselves from being truly known. They cannot keep pretending certain feelings are insignificant when the same thoughts keep returning. And most importantly, they are beginning to understand something they once resisted: meeting the right person does not always make life simpler. Sometimes it makes the truth impossible to ignore. Stay with this, because the next realization is the one they never expected to have about you. Your soulmate may have originally believed that their hidden side needed to remain hidden forever. Perhaps they became comfortable being mysterious, emotionally controlled, or impossible to predict. It gave them certainty. Nobody could misunderstand what they never revealed. Nobody could challenge dreams they never shared. But then something unexpected happened. You seemed to connect with pieces of them they had never openly explained. Somehow, you made their carefully maintained identity feel incomplete. That does not mean you magically know everything about them. It means your connection became a question they could no longer answer with their usual mask. What if someone could appreciate the person behind the performance? What if they did not need to appear perfect to be valued? Don't skip this thought, because it leads directly toward the biggest revelation yet. In reality, your soulmate is a dreamer disguised as someone practical. A deeply reflective person disguised as someone unaffected. A future builder disguised as someone satisfied with the present. They have ambitions they rarely discuss and possibilities they secretly imagine when nobody is asking them to explain themselves. And recently, one possibility has become unusually difficult to dismiss: a future where they stop performing and begin living more authentically. That is why their energy may feel different in this story. They are not merely thinking about another person. They are questioning an entire identity. The surprising truth behind "your soulmate is not who they pretend to be" is not that they are secretly worse than you imagined. It may be exactly the opposite. There could be far more depth, tenderness, imagination, and courage beneath the surface than their outward personality has ever revealed. But wait, there is one final contradiction inside them. They want to be seen, yet being seen requires vulnerability. They want the future to change, yet change asks them to release familiar habits. They want someone to understand their authentic self, yet they have spent so long making that self difficult to reach. This is the crossroads. Something huge is waiting on the other side of it, because eventually they must choose between protecting the image and revealing the person. And increasingly, the image is losing its power. The person underneath wants room to breathe. Their real dreams want a voice. Their genuine intentions want direction. For perhaps the first time, they are beginning to realize that authenticity is not weakness, it is freedom. So remember this as the next chapter approaches: you are not being shown a finished answer yet. You are watching an identity transform. The person behind the mask is slowly stepping forward, and there is still one thing they have not revealed: the exact future they have pictured once pretending is no longer necessary. That vision contains a choice, a conversation, and one unexpected detail that could change the meaning of everything you have heard so far. Stay till the end of this journey, because when that final detail comes into focus, you will understand why your soulmate could hide their true nature from almost everyone, but could not hide it forever. Here is where the illusion finally begins to fall away, because your soulmate has reached a realization they can no longer quietly place back on the shelf. For so long, they believed their carefully controlled identity was protecting their future. They thought appearing unaffected would keep everything simple. They thought keeping their deepest intentions private would give them time to understand what they truly wanted. But something has reversed. The disguise that once felt comfortable now feels limiting, because the future they secretly imagine requires a level of honesty their old identity cannot provide. Stay a little longer, because this is the moment when the question changes from, who are they really, to something far more important: what are they finally ready to do about it? Behind the personality everyone sees is someone who has been quietly preparing for a life with more meaning. Your soulmate is not merely a dreamer. They are a builder waiting for the courage to begin. They think about stability, growth, purpose. The kind of connection where two people inspire each other without needing to pretend they have everything figured out. And strangely, whenever their mind travels toward that future, your presence keeps appearing somewhere inside the picture. Perhaps not as a perfectly written story. Perhaps not with every detail decided. But as a possibility they cannot completely erase. Don't skip this part, because they have tried to reason their way around that possibility. They have asked themselves whether it is simply timing, curiosity, or imagination. Yet the thought keeps returning with greater clarity: what if the person who sees beyond my surface is exactly the person I should stop hiding from? And now comes the revelation they have resisted. In reality, your soulmate may be a person who wants commitment far more than their outward behavior suggests. Not rushed promises or unrealistic perfection, but something steady, genuine, and intentional. Their independence was real, but it was never the entire story. Their silence was real, but it did not mean emptiness. Their uncertainty existed, but beneath it was another truth slowly becoming stronger: they want a connection where tomorrow can actually be discussed instead of endlessly avoided. That realization surprised even them. Because once someone admits what they genuinely want, they can no longer comfortably accept everything that contradicts it. The mask begins losing its purpose. If this journey has made you think differently about the gap between appearances and intentions, you can share it with someone who might connect with the message. Leave your perspective in the comments, and subscribe if you want to follow where this story goes next. Now stay close, because there is still one missing piece. Your soulmate has begun imagining what they would say if there were no expectations, no performance, and no need to appear completely certain. And the words forming inside them are surprisingly simple. They do not want to impress you. They want to be understood by you. That difference changes everything. Because somewhere ahead, they can see two possible paths. On one path, nothing changes. They remain predictable, protected, and partially unknown. On the other, they step forward as the person they actually are, someone with enormous hopes, unfinished plans, hidden tenderness, and the desire to create something meaningful instead of merely wondering what could have happened. Something huge is waiting at the edge of that second path. Not because destiny guarantees what another person will choose, but because truth creates possibilities that pretending never can. Your soulmate is approaching the moment when they must decide whether their authentic self remains private or finally becomes visible. And there is one last twist you have not heard yet. The future they have been picturing contains a detail they initially tried to remove, and every time they imagined the picture again, that same detail returned. It was not a place. It was not an achievement. It was not something material. It was a person standing beside the version of themselves they most wanted to become. Wait until the next revelation, because understanding who that person represents will finally explain why your soulmate could pretend for so long, and why that pretending may now be reaching its end. The missing piece has finally come into view, and it changes the meaning of everything that came before. When your soulmate pictured the strongest, calmest, most authentic version of themselves, the person standing beside that future was not there to rescue them, complete them, or decide their life for them. That person represented something much rarer, a connection where they could finally stop performing. And in their imagination, that presence carried qualities they associate with you. Your way of seeing beyond appearances. Your ability to make ordinary moments feel meaningful. The strange sense that certain conversations remain unfinished even after they end. Stay with this, because the revelation is not simply that your soulmate thinks about you. It is that thinking about you has forced them to think differently about themselves. For perhaps the first time, they are recognizing the distance between the identity they display and the life they genuinely want. They may look like someone who always knows the next move, but beneath that certainty is a person still discovering what deserves their energy. They may appear perfectly comfortable keeping everything casual and undefined, yet somewhere deeper they are questioning whether temporary comfort is worth sacrificing something meaningful. That is why the title carries such an unexpected truth: your soulmate is not who they pretend to be. In reality, your soulmate is a seeker. Someone searching for authenticity beneath all the expectations, routines, and roles they have learned to carry. And you may have become a symbol of the honesty they have been missing. But something even more interesting is happening. They are beginning to understand that revealing themselves cannot depend entirely on what you do next. Their growth belongs to them. Their courage belongs to them. Their decision to communicate clearly must come from within. This changes the energy of the entire story, because instead of waiting endlessly for circumstances to become perfect, they are slowly realizing that authenticity requires action. What if this is the turning point? What if the biggest transformation is not a dramatic announcement but a quiet decision to stop sending mixed signals, stop hiding behind appearances, and finally allow their actions to match what they genuinely value? Don't skip this moment, the answer is closer than it has ever been. There was once a version of your soulmate who believed being unreadable made them powerful. Now they are discovering another kind of strength, being clear. Imagine that shift. Instead of making someone guess, they speak. Instead of pretending something means nothing, they acknowledge what matters. Instead of building their future around avoiding uncertainty, they begin building around purpose. Something huge is waiting inside that realization, because the person underneath the disguise was never meant to remain hidden forever. Their true nature is not a shocking identity waiting to frighten you. It is a more complete human being waiting to be expressed, thoughtful, ambitious, emotionally aware, and increasingly unwilling to settle for a life that feels disconnected from who they really are. And still, one question remains unanswered. If they finally stop pretending, what is the first truth they would actually tell you? Not the polished version. Not the sentence they would prepare for everyone else. The honest sentence. The one that has been rewritten countless times inside their mind because every version somehow felt incomplete. Stay till the end, because that sentence reveals the final transformation. It explains why your presence became connected to their future, why their old identity started feeling too small, and why the person they are becoming may surprise even them. The mask is almost gone now. What remains is choice. They can return to familiar patterns, or they can step into a future where their inner world and outer actions finally match. And somewhere beyond that choice waits the most unexpected revelation of all. Perhaps the real secret was never simply who your soulmate was hiding from you. Perhaps it was who they were quietly becoming because they finally realized that the right connection should not require a disguise. One sentence has survived every version of the conversation your soulmate has rehearsed inside their mind, and it is not the sentence you would expect. It is not dramatic. It does not demand anything from you. It simply carries the truth they have struggled to express. I want you to know the person I am when I'm not trying to be what everyone expects. That is the hidden center of everything. Beneath the confidence, the careful distance, and the unreadable moments is someone who has grown tired of dividing themselves into two versions, the one the world receives and the one that only appears in private. Stay a little longer, because what happens when those two versions finally meet could redefine everything you thought this story was leading toward. Your soulmate has started recognizing that the future cannot be built entirely through imagination. A beautiful possibility means very little if nobody has the courage to communicate honestly. And this realization has changed the questions inside them. Instead of wondering, will I look vulnerable, they are beginning to wonder, what might I lose by never being genuine? Instead of asking whether the timing will ever become perfect, they are considering whether perfect timing was simply another reason to wait. You might miss the turning point here. The person who once protected every emotion is slowly learning that clarity can be more powerful than mystery. Not because every truth guarantees a particular outcome, but because an authentic life requires the courage to let reality replace endless guessing. And this is where their real identity becomes clearer. In reality, your soulmate is a transformer, someone standing between an old identity and a new one. The old version knew how to survive expectations. The emerging version wants to create something meaningful. The old version measured strength by how little they revealed. The emerging version measures strength by whether their choices reflect their values. Think about how enormous that difference is. Their disguise was never necessarily a lie, it was an incomplete picture. They showed the world the qualities they knew how to control while keeping their deepest hopes somewhere beyond reach. But now those hopes are demanding space. Something huge is waiting in that shift, because once someone realizes their identity has become too small for their future, remaining unchanged becomes increasingly difficult. There is another detail you should hear before moving forward. Your soulmate is also beginning to understand that you deserve authenticity, not confusion. If there is something meaningful between two people, it should eventually become clearer through real choices, respectful communication, and consistent actions, not endless signs that require interpretation. That realization matters. It means their next chapter cannot simply consist of more private thoughts. At some point, what they value must become visible in how they behave. Stay till the end of this journey, because the biggest revelation will not be a mysterious clue. It will be the moment when intention and action finally stand beside each other. Imagine your soulmate looking toward everything they could become over the next few years. More focused. More courageous. More comfortable with themselves. They see opportunities they once considered impossible. They see conversations they once avoided becoming necessary. And somewhere inside that vision is a simple desire. To be surrounded by people with whom they never need to shrink, perform, or constantly prove themselves. That is why your presence became meaningful in this story. Not because another person can complete their transformation, but because being truly seen can sometimes remind someone that they are capable of becoming more honest with themselves. Now only one door remains unopened. Behind it is not another disguise but a decision. Your soulmate must choose whether the person they have discovered within themselves stays imaginary or becomes real through their actions. And when that door finally opens, you may discover the most surprising answer to the title yet. Your soulmate is not who they pretend to be. Beneath everything, they are someone who has been preparing to become more authentic than anyone expected, and the final thing they are preparing to leave behind may explain why this transformation had to happen.